What is going on, guys? This is Jake at That Fit Friend, and today I'll be reviewing the Vans MTE Crosspath. I also have the mid, and I will discuss the mid a little bit as well in this video, but you can kind of rope both of those shoes into the singular review. So 3 things to like with the Crosspath is number 1, if you like the Ultra Range shoe and you are very happy with how that shoe fits and how that shoe feels and its comfort, I think you'll really love the Crosspath. It is very similar in the sense that it does have that slightly narrower build to the forefoot in this model, and so it does give you a good lockdown feel for my narrow and medium foot width folks out there, and it has a consistent and comfortable feel with the Ultra Cush midsole in this shoe. It does have a slightly higher stack height than the Ultra Range XO, but for a hiking shoe that's going to give you a bit more comfort, I do like that for this model. And so if, again, you like the Ultra Range XO and you're thinking about getting these as your hiking shoes, I think you will feel right at home with this model. The second thing to like with this shoe is the upper construction. So with this model's upper, you have a blend of mesh and textile materials, but it's also been waterproofed. And so in the snow and in damp climates, this shoe has done a good job of keeping my foot relatively dry. And so if you want this shoe for all season wear, or more specifically like fall, winter, and spring wear, where it's going to be a little bit more damp, or if let's say you live in Colorado and you're navigating slush and snow, this can be a good option to go with. And if you go with the mid shoe, you also get a bit more boot, and there's a lot more padding and cushion up here, so it does give you a bit more warmth throughout your ankle. So it can be a decent mid option too for deeper snow settings and whatnot. But for the most part, this water repellent upper has done a pretty good job from keeping my feet relatively dry. I had to navigate some snow the other night when I went out to eat in this shoe, and it did a really good job, and my foot stayed relatively warm at that. The third thing to like with this shoe are the lugs on the outsole. So with this model, you can kind of wear it for a lot of different terrains and get a good amount of grip. I have worn this shoe on dirt paths, gravel paths, rocks, snow, pretty much everything I could try to wear the shoe on, I have, and it's done a really good job, and I've really enjoyed how the lugs give me bite on different surfaces. It is a good multi-traction shoe, and you can do hikes and then some light running in it. With this model, I have run up to 2 to 3 miles at a time, and then I'll walk and then I'll run again for my trail runs, and it's done a pretty good job at providing grip, but then also a decent amount of comfort. So all that to say, this can be a really good option, I think, for all season wear, especially colder months, but then also really good for multi-traction use if you're navigating a lot of different terrains and you want this shoe for walking, hiking, and then also maybe some casual running. But now let's talk about a couple of cons that I have with the MTE Crosspath. So 2 cons that I have with the Crosspath is number 1, the toe box. The toe box is going to be the major knock, I think, on this shoe for anybody who just despises how they fit and they feel. So with the toe box in this shoe, you have a pretty aggressive taper, just like the Vans Ultra Range XO. That's why I say if you like that shoe, you will like the Crosspath. But for my folks out there who find that shoe to be a little bit uncomfortable in the toe box or just too narrow, you're going to feel the same with the Crosspath. Pass on this model. I'm going to save you some money right there. But with this shoe, you have an aggressive taper, and then with this mesh and textile upper blend of materials, it can hug your foot a little bit more. So this model does take about 2 weeks to break in to start feeling even a little bit better after that. I have an E to double E width foot. I am pushing the limit in this shoe, and when I do wear them, I purposely wear thin socks just to give myself even more room, and I would love to obviously not have to think about that for my hiking shoes. I don't want to have to go and constantly just have a singular type of sock to wear just to make this shoe fit. I would rather have more range there. So toe box in both of these models, run narrow, and if you have a wide foot, so E width or wider, size up a half size to a full size. If you have a wider than 2 E width foot, I would say probably pass on the shoe entirely. The second con that I have with this model is just understanding where the shoe is going to fall short at times. So if you're buying this shoe, for example, to have a shoe for both hiking, walking, and then running, it's not going to be your most dialed trail running shoe. It's not optimally built for that, and so it's not really a knock against this shoe because it's not really built for it. But I do know a lot of folks out there who want this shoe for a little bit of everything, and if you're like me and you wanted this shoe for hiking, walking, and running, it's just important to keep in mind that the shoe can have some thresholds. It's not going to be your most plush trail shoe out there if you're doing longer distances, but for short durations, it can work. And it's important to keep in mind that if that is you as well, this model is going to be a little bit stiff to break in at the start, so it's going to need a couple of weeks. And with this upper, I'm telling you, you're going to need a couple weeks to also break it in. What I did to actually help expedite this is I tried to wear this shoe just casually and wear them looser so I could just put a little bit more stress into this upper outside of just hiking in them and only using them for that activity, but they're still pretty snug. And so all that to say, this model's downfalls are the narrow toe box and that it will have some limitations depending on how you plan to use it. To break down the performance of the Crosspath, I'll discuss how the shoe does for hiking, light trail running, and then also some casual wear, because I wanted to see if this model could transcend just trail use like I used the XO for. I used that for a little bit of everything. Wanted to see if this model was similar. So when it comes to hiking, I have thoroughly enjoyed this shoe. Now there are 3 things that I like with this model for hiking specifically. Number 1, the Ultra Cush midsole I think is very comfortable. It gives you a good degree of comfort, but it's also not so plush to where you almost feel uneven with going down steep ascents and descents. So I do like that a lot with this shoe. It has a good blend, I think, of stability, but then also giving you enough comfort, especially for longer hikes and trails. The second thing to like with the shoe is the upper. This upper, I think, does a really good job at repelling water, but then also just staying breathable enough while keeping your feet relatively warm. It's been interesting. I've worn this shoe on 90-degree days and they've been okay. And then I've also worn the shoe in snow and I thought they were also okay as well. So I do like how this upper kind of transcends this multi-season use. And I also like the appearance of it. I think this is a slick looking shoe. Honestly, I bought the mid just because I think it looks fly. And these are shoes that I would wear out in a mountain town just casually on top of wearing them to the trail. So I do like the appearance of this shoe. It has that classic Vans stripe as well. So if you are a sucker for Vans like me, that is also something that you'll probably appreciate. The third thing to like with the shoe is the outsole. Honestly, I've been really shocked at how grippy these lugs are and just this rubber. It has a nice grippy feel to it. It doesn't feel overly dense. It doesn't feel super hardened by any means, especially when using it in colder weather. So I like that a lot, especially for multi-traction use. If you are navigating light to moderate trails or even slightly sketchier trails, these shoes should do a good job of giving you a good degree of grip. My main knock against this shoe for hiking is just the width. If your foot is too wide for this model, it is not going to feel comfortable, and that is the biggest downfall of the shoe, in my opinion, for their hiking performance, since this is kind of that first shoe from Vans for this use. They knocked it out of the park, but then they made the toe box narrow and kind of took away a lot of its ability to be really comfortable for longer use. Now, when it comes to trail running, I think this shoe can work for shorter intervals. So for example, if you're hitting a trail and you're doing 1 to 2 miles and then you're like walking a half mile and then you're doing 1 to 2 miles on light to moderate terrains, this can be a good option. The Ultra Cush midsole is going to be forgiving enough to give you enough comfort, but then also responsiveness. So if you are somebody that's doing sporadic jogs throughout your hikes, this can be a good option to go with, even though it's not a trail running shoe. Now, it will again have its limitations if you need a shoe for longer trail runs, but for my folks out there who are a lot more casual with their hiking and you want that shoe just to wear out and about and then go hike in, but then maybe do some running in, these models can work. Now, granted, the mid, it will run a little bit hot with this mid construction, but I think if you're in snow, you'll appreciate that. And like that will be that one of those give and takes there with that shoe specifically. When it comes to casual use and daily wear, the comfort of this model is awesome, and so is the grip of the outsole. I also like the durability of this shoe for the most part. I have yet to have issues with either of my shoes when it comes to the uppers ripping apart or lipping when it comes to the textiles up here on the forefoot and midfoot. But again, the main knock here is the toe box. If they made the toe box wider, we could be cooking with gas, or at least Vans offer a wide option if you're not going to make all the toe box a little bit more anatomical, because this narrowness is just really uncomfortable. And I don't have the widest foot in the game here. I have an E to double E with foot. That is pretty standard, I think, for most folks out there, especially for folks who are used to barefoot shoes, but also like to wear shoes. So with that in mind, if you want this shoe for all day wear and you have a wide foot, it is not going to be your best bet. Once again, I cannot stress that enough. When it comes to the price of the MTE Crosspath, you can expect to pay $130. I think if you want this shoe for multi-season use and casual use and you have a foot anatomy that aligns with it, it makes a lot of sense for the price. It is very in line with other premium trail shoes, and if you like Vans shoes and you want to keep consistent with your fashion and just your overall appearance with your footwear, I think that's where the price also makes a lot of sense. All right, so now let's answer the question, who should buy the Vans MTE Crosspath? Number one, narrow and medium foot widths. You are going to align really well with this shoe, and I think if that sounds like you will likely feel at home with the last construction of this model and the upper volume. The second context where I think this shoe makes a lot of sense is if you're somebody that wants that shoe that you can go out and shovel the driveway in, wear out and about around town, but then also go to some hikes and light trail runs in, this can be a really great option to explore. And then the third context is if you live in a damp climate, this shoe can also be a good option with its upper construction. It has done a pretty good job from my use cases of keeping my feet relatively dry even when wearing thinner socks. Now, who should pass on this shoe? Number one, wide feet. Don't buy this model. I'm telling you right now, it's not going to feel comfortable. And if you have a flatter foot and you don't like any arch, that would also be something to consider with the shoe, just because the taper from the midfoot into the forefoot. The second context where the shoe can start to fall short is if you're somebody that wants that trail shoe that's going to be a little bit more agile and plush for trail running specifically, you might want to pass on this model as well. All right, when it comes to the sizing and fit of the Vans MTE Crosspath, narrow and medium feet, go true to size. Now, if you do have a narrow or medium foot width and you're typically hitting the end of your toe box, size up a half size. I'm telling you right now, it won't feel too big and you'll hedge your bets and give yourself even more toe box room, which is always a good thing. If you have a D, E, double E width foot, size up a half size automatically and go up a full size if you're on that double E width range, because again, this model does run narrow. If you have double E width feet and you're already kind of sketchy and you're not sure about this model, or if you have wider feet than that, pass on the shoe. I'm telling you, even if you size up, it's likely going to feel way too snug for you. So when it comes to the weight, heel toe drop, and insole in the MTE Crosspath, for the low top model here, for my size 10, we have a weight of 13.25 ounces. For the mid here in a size 10, we have a weight of 14.15 ounces. The heel to toe drop of the shoe is TBD, but if I had to guess, it's pretty dang low. It feels relatively flat, so I would guess that it's probably zero drop like most Vans shoes. And then when it comes to the insole does not come out in the shoe. And because this model does have this lower volume upper and this narrow toe box, I think that's what also gives this shoe a narrower fit. Like, you can't really take this out. There is an adhesive. You could rip it out, but I honestly don't love doing that just because then the insole never really goes in perfectly fine again. So keep that in mind before you invest in this shoe, especially if you have a higher instep or a thicker foot. All right, now let's look at the construction of the Vans MTE Crosspath. So up here on the toe box, you have an extended outsole layer that wraps around the entirety of this shoe. I love this because it gives you additional security and durability when you're using this shoe outdoors. The upper of this model is built with a blend of mesh and textile materials, so you have layers here on the forefoot and then through the midfoot. You also have that classic Vans branding on the medial and lateral side of the shoe. The boot itself is a mesh and it is padded, so you do have a bit of padding back here, and you also have an external heel tab back here to help pull this shoe on with some MTE branding, which stands for Made for the Elements. Looking at the midfoot in this shoe, you have 5 eyelets that go up with a 6 back here for lace lock. This top eyelet is made with a TPU, and then the tongue itself does have a gusset, and it is a thin mesh, and there is some padding throughout the middle part of this tongue. Looking at the midsole in this shoe, you have the Ultra Cush midsole that runs throughout. It is a little thicker than the XO if that's a model that you've worn before, but it does have that same kind of comfort and medium density plushness to it, so it is very comfortable on the foot. Looking at the outsole, you have a full rubber outsole with pretty aggressive lugs throughout the forefoot, heel, and midfoot. You do have a break here with some exposed foam at the midfoot, but honestly, I don't think it's enough to really warrant the shoe breaking down super quick. I have yet to have issues with this model whatsoever, and I've worn these in some pretty wet settings. Once again, this model does not have a removable insole, and there's a lot of cool construction features with this shoe regarding the materials that Vans used. You can check those all out on the product page. I'm not going to bore you with all those details right now in this video, but if you have additional questions on the construction features discussed in this video, drop a comment down below. All right, guys, that wraps up my review of the Vans MTE Crosspath. Now, would I buy this shoe again? No. But I do love them. I honestly, this has been the first shoe where I'm like, I really like this shoe, but solely because of the fit, I can't buy it again. It's too narrow for my foot anatomy. And if Vans made a wider model, we would be cooking with gas. Make a wider model of the Vans Ultra Range XO and this model Vans, and I'm telling you, you would capture a way bigger share of the market for what these shoes are trying to tackle. But all that to say, if you have additional questions on this shoe, drop a comment down below or reach out to me personally, whichever you prefer. And as always, y'all, drop a like on the video, drop a subscribe to the channel. I will see you guys in the next one.